Good afternoon, Bole sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Smita. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Nice to meet you and talk to you after a long time.
Very, very long time.
Yes, yes. Thank you again, sir, for all your guidance.
You're welcome. Oh, yeah. How much time do we have?
So we have another 5 more minutes.
Okay. How was the talk today?
So the morning talk we had on NBA, Dr. Jaiswal, yes, it was good. He spoke in detail about the various metrics of NBA and the alignment with the NEP policy.
Okay. Okay.
Sir, we have Dr. Sashmita Singh, who has joined us. Yes, she's one of the members of the coordinating committee.
Okay. Dr. Natika is not around, is it?
She will be joining in a few minutes.
Okay. No, it's okay. I'm just asking. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon to one and all present. Welcome to the fourth session on quality assurance, accreditation, and assessment in higher education, NAC perspective of day 2 of the Symposium on National Education Policy 2020. The eminent resource speaker for the session is Dr. Balachandra Bole, Mentor, IQAC Cluster, India. Dr. Bole retired as the head Department of Microbiology, Abasaheb Garware College in September 2017 after 37 years of teaching. He was the IQAC coordinator of his college for 14 years, spearheading the efforts of his college to earn the grade 8 twice through 3 cycles of NAC accreditation of his college. He was awarded the Gunwant Shikshak Puraskar for his contribution in institutional development throughout his college career. Along with teaching, Dr. Bole was interested in academia institute collaborations. In this effort, he has developed a good rapport with several industries and successfully handled industry-related consultancy projects related to microbiological problems in engineering industries in and around Pune. This enriched his experience in looking at situations pragmatically and analytically to achieve the set goals. On the research front, besides being an approved PhD research guide of his university, he has completed 2 postdoctoral assignments in Canada 1999 and Mauritius 2004 related to pollution control technologies. Another milestone achievement was a departmental project funded by DBT under the public-private partnership with an outlay of approximately rupees 4 crore. After his retirement, he has continued counseling and guiding colleges in the NAC accreditation process. He has been instrumental in designing the FDPs and train the trainer workshops that have been conducted throughout the intervention of the IQAC Cluster India and RUSA Maharashtra at colleges and universities across Maharashtra. He was the academic ambassador under the UGC Paramarsh scheme for Kamala Nehru College, Delhi. He has also been invited as a member of review committees for NAC preparations of universities and autonomous colleges. He is one of the founding members of IQAC Cluster. In these efforts, he has been a resource person at several events. He is also an expert member of 4 colleges presently. He has and is presently guiding diverse HEIs, including management, teacher education, engineering, arts, science, and commerce colleges for their NAC assessment and accreditation process. We are delighted to have you with us today, sir, and it would be a pleasure to hear you
Thank
as
you.
always. Over to Dr. Bole.
Thank you, Dr. Smita. I'd like to start by acknowledging the invitation and with due respect to all the management members and the director, Dr. Harish Purohit, and the IQAC team and your sponsors, I will start sharing my screen if you allow me to, and then begin my talk. Can you hear me, madam?
Yes, sir. So you are the co-host, so you can
Yeah.
share your screen.
Okay, fine. Just to clarify, can you see the screen and hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear the screen. We can hear you, and the screen is visible.
Yeah, and the screen. Okay, so it's loud enough and clear enough. So I will begin without any too many formalities in the way. I will begin with the topic that has been given to me: quality assurance, accreditation, and assessment in higher education, a NAC perspective. Now, this is under the symposium, 5-day symposium organized by SFIMAR under the National Education Policy NEP 2020. That is the overall title. So taking this title in mind and the topic given to me, I thought that I will take this in two different areas. Number one is what is happening at present and also what could happen in the future with accreditation and assessment with a NAC perspective. So these are the two major parts that I will be talking about. I've intertwined them, and this intertwine, I will begin with the introduction. As we can see, the objective of your SFMR symposium, which you had put in the brochure, begins with two statements: to stimulate the thought process, ideas in implementation of NEP in HEIs, and the other one is to imbibe robust accreditation process. So I was going to take these two words, stimulate and imbibe, and I hope that the participants would get stimulated, the thought process would get stimulated on how it is going to be implemented, and to imbibe the present and the coming accreditation process. So looking at these two, I hope that I can achieve this objective of the SFMR symposium by the time I end my talk. These are the areas of discussion. Now I have put them, everybody knows them, but I have put them with a very, very distinct reason, and that is that I do not want to overlap with the people who have already spoken and the people who will be speaking later. So I will be very, very specifically talking about the accreditation and assessment process with a NAC perspective. There will be some links which I will be taking from the other topics. For example, when we are going to talk about the last one, that is online and digital education, ensuring equitable use of technology, how this technology is also relevant in accreditation. Regarding the outcome-based education and the academic bank of credits, how they are going to be really assessed and what is the significance of that. Then talking about NBA, what are the differences, or let us say what is the perspective of NBA and what is the NAC perspective when it comes to a comparison, and what are the multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary dimensions and how they will affect the assessment and accreditation. So these are some of the things which will be mentioned but not talked about in detail at all. So if there are any questions at the end, I would take them. Plus, please keep in mind that you are going to get a lot of information on those aspects in the later time and may have already got them by now. Okay, so we will begin with what is the importance of accreditation. It's a very philosophical question that people put up, that why what is accreditation, why is it important, why has it been brought about in such an old educational system which has been going on for years and years, why accreditation now? So fundamentally, to set some quality standards for all education institutes or programs. No student or the parent of a student or the guardian of a student would want substandard education. So there must be some set of quality standards, and those are coming under the umbrella of accreditation. So this is the first and foremost reason. The second one is providing access to state and central government funding. Now this we know, it has been happening. It began with UGC 2F and 12B, especially 12B. 12B has accessed funds, every HEI has accessed funds from 12B of the UGC Act, right? Now that is what, if should we give this to every college who has got a 2F and 12B, or should we only give it to colleges who are showing progress? So this is another, let us say, a cutoff, that accreditation becomes a sort of benchmark, that if you are accredited, your access to funds can increase or you can get the funding at all. Then when we look at colleges and students who are going out into the after their education, whether it's UG, PG, PhD, whatever, they will enter, at least quite a few would enter a private sector, either for a job or for research or any other career oriented outlet. And in this context, the private sector, who are operating at a totally different level of ROI, what is their return on investment in a person who is working for them? So this confidence to build up, we must have some very good standards which are set by accreditation. Then makes transferring credits easier. Now this is a new concept that we are putting in through the NEP, that we are taking our syllabi, converting them into credits, or making a credit system, and then we are allowing horizontal and vertical mobility across institutions which are offering similar credits or they want new credits. So this is a new aspect, that if you are accredited at a similar level and you have a similar course structure, then transferring credits becomes easier. So you don't have to go from a higher accredited college to a lower accredited college. So this is one thing which is going to be important. And the last one, which is the most important actually, it maintains student confidence. Now, what is student confidence is in the next slide. That why should a student be interested in accreditation? Today, when we are looking at accreditation, we think of accreditation of the institution, and that the institution is responsible for everything that is related to accreditation, and some information about students and their activity is considered in the whole accreditation manual. What is their feedback? How many students you have? Do you provide this? What types of outcomes do they have? But if I'm looking at it from the student point of view, why should I be interested in the accreditation status of any college, whether I'm going into it, whether I'm studying into it, whether I want to go to it? So either of that, the student should be told that when he or she graduates and is looking for a job specifically, employers could take into consideration which college you attended. That is very normal, that they will look at your mark sheet. Oh, this was the college. It's a very good college. But now, there are many good colleges. So if you, how will you gauge whether it is a better one of the good colleges? Then accreditation by a reliable agency would actually be there. So if the student is told about accreditation, how it happens, what happens, and when I get an A grade, what does it really mean? What have I fulfilled as an HEI towards the student? And therefore, that is one thing. The second part, which we have seen quite a lot, if you look at the NAC website today also, there are a couple of institutions which have been debarred from accreditation, right? What was the reason? questionable accreditation. That is, the data that was given was questionable, and therefore the accreditation which was there was not given to them, and they have been debarred. So if you are from an institution which is questionable, then the validity of the degree is also questioned, and therefore your potential as a good job candidate is also questioned. So this is another part why the student should be interested in accreditation. That student can blindly then take an admission to a good, accredited college, saying that, no, I know that the college will be accepted by whoever is going to either employ me or take me up further in my career. The other part, which is related to transfer of credits, that if the student wants to go into another university or another college, right, then what type of an institute should be selected? Again, there accreditation will come into place. So that is these are the three major areas where a student should look into and be interested in accreditation. We rarely talk about this is because we have not yet started talking about the validity of a degree based on the accreditation of an institution. We have still not associated the two very, very clearly. We have associated good colleges in our area or in a particular thing. If you look at, if you go onto the website of any, if I'm, for example, if I'm looking for good management colleges in Mumbai, what would I see? I would see n number of ads, n number of websites which talk about shiksha.com and all those kinds, and institutional websites. And everyone or many of these common websites like shiksha.com, whichever college is going to pay them to subscribe to them, they will say it is one of the best colleges in Mumbai. Now, what does one of the best means? How many best are there? Everybody can't be the best. And they never say that which is not the good one. So this is what we are talking about, is accreditation from the student point of view. Okay. Now, the outline of my talk today with a focus on NEP 2020 will be what is the primary objective of NAC accreditation, the evolution of the accreditation process, what has happened till now, what is going to be happening in the near future, possibly. What are the expectations of assessment and accreditation vis-a-vis NEP 2020? And what are the possible challenges to this vision of revised, or let us say the new proposed assessment and accreditation system? What are the possible challenges as what we see the picture today? So this is what I'm going to talk about today. That is the outline of my talk. The primary references that I have used, number one is, of course, the NAC website. Number two is the white paper, which was published in July 13th, on July 13th, 2022, which was Guru Purnima. The principal authors are the Honorable Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, who is the chairman of the NAC EC, Executive Council, and Dr. Professor KP Mohanan. These are the principal authors. I'm talking about draft number 45. Then the other document which has come in September 22, that is Guidelines for Transforming Higher Education Institutes into Multidisciplinary Institutions. This is more from the point of view of what the academics would be, what the courses would be, what the syllabi could be, how you would be designing the credits, what would you mean by transferring the credits, what would be your learning outcomes. So that is, I've used it wherever it is related only to the assessment part. And the last one, but not the least, is the focus, that is NEP 2020, the document, policy document published by the Government of India, Ministry of Human Resource Development. So these are my four primary references which I have used for the talk today. Now, if you look at these three primary documents, Reimagining Assessment and Accreditation, the white paper, then the Guidelines of Transforming the HEIs to Multidisciplinary, and NEP 2020, we will see that it rotates around. There are many things which are still not fleshed out. This term has been used quite a lot in the white paper, fleshed out. That basically what they're talking about is they need to be thought about, brainstorming, and they brought, so the skeleton is there, we need to put the flesh on it. Okay, so in both documents there are some things which are not really discretely defined but proposed, and in this context they keep on rotating around each other, the focus being the NEP 2020. So coming to the second part, that is the history or the background of accreditation. When we are looking at the history of accreditation, there was a previous document which I will also be referring to. Technically, accreditation began in 1880 in the USA, and these were called as regional accreditation agencies. By regions, they meant the Northwest, the Northeast, right? The South, the middle part of USA. So they had regional accreditation agencies because universities began from a focus and spread out. Their system of university is totally different from ours. So they had planned regional accreditation agencies for universities. After that, in 1912 to 1980, again in the USA, there was an accrediting council for independent colleges and schools. So from the universities, they made a smaller establishment, ACICS, which was accrediting colleges and schools of things. So a sub part of the university was being doing, and the American Council of Education, which was actually fortifying what the education system was to be done. So the first one came in 1912, then in 1980 the ACE came. Now after this, accreditation was nearly established in the whole situation in USA around 1930. So we are talking about a period of around 50 years, from 1880 to 1930, for the accreditation to be established in the USA. Now, if we are looking at the same kind of thing in India, our accreditation was proposed in NPE 1986. Our first national policy on education was put up, the previous one was put up in 1986. And in 1992, the program of action on the NPE was proposed in 1992. And section 11.2.4 in the program of action, it is stated that in March 1992, UGC resolved to set up a National Accreditation and Assessment Council as an autonomous body for the achievement of the objectives envisaged in NPE. So we have taken another 6 years to actually say that we will do it, and government would take an early view on UGC's proposal. This is what is stated in the POA 1992. And after 1992, we see that NAC was established in 1994 within 2 years. At the same time, NBA was also brought in. So in India, we started everything in 1994. We are in 2022, and we have seen a lot of changes over there. After India, then came UK, which is a surprising thing because we always followed the British. Here, the British possibly followed us. And in 1997, the Quality Assurance Agency in UK was established. Subsequently, other countries came in, right? And then we had Europe and Japan coming in, Sri Lanka and Africa coming in, and then we have APQN, which is the Asia Pacific Quality Network. In fact, Dr. Patil from NAC, Dr. Jagannath Patil, he was a major official, or let us say member of the body on APQN, and he has got an award for that, for his contributions to APQN and quality assurance. After that, Australia came in 2011, pretty late. And then in 2020, we got our NEP 2020, and we have now in 2022. So this is how the thought process is. But what I want to get across is that because of many changes happening in the education scenario of how education should be given, how education should look like, and how educational policies are changing, right? The accreditation process will never become a stable system. It will keep on changing all the time, and that is what we will have to actually not only follow but actually suggest and keep a track of. That we have to be in constant touch. In my introduction, Dr. Smita said that I was working with quite a few industries, and that was one of my positives, where I got a lot of feedback from industry, right, saying that, see, your syllabi, whatever you are trying to teach, right, does not work on our shop floors, right? On our shop floors, we don't need people to know the theory of something. We need that person to do it. And that to do, right, we are now learning what will the student be able to do is what we have learned over some time through the Bloom's taxonomy, that what is the action verb for the educational outcome. Now, this is what we are looking at, and this is where we will be getting into. So it is not going to stop, and it will continue. So we cannot say that it is a stable ecosystem at the present moment. Then why did accreditation begin in India? These are some statements which have been taken from ANAC, right, and NBA and NIRF, and some research papers, right, where I have brought them down into only 4 statements. Number 1 is to address deterioration of education in HEIs. Now, this was also felt in 1986. Okay, and that is what we are still trying to do. To identify excellent HEIs, we have started doing that by giving CE, CPE, autonomy. So we are trying to identify excellent HEIs whose performance is there, to identify scrupulous HEIs. I just told you 2 examples, that there are 2 institutions who have been debarred from accreditation, found to be either scrupulous in terms of what their data is or whatever, but this is what has happened. Okay, so this is what we are looking at, and therefore we have to actually think about how we are going to look at it. And the last one, but not again, to identify weaknesses in HEI and to help them to improve. Now, this is a primary NAC objective, that we are going to help them to improve. And this help, one of the criteria is to set standards through accreditation. So these standards which are being set are not being considered as a hurdle, should be considered as a benchmark to which an institute should reach and cross. Now, this is the picture on the evolution of NAC accreditation. Okay, I've talked about the NPE 1986, 1982, 1992 was established in 1994. We had the old methodology where we had to write a couple of theses and submit those papers with a big binding, take the whole thing and submit it to NAC, go there and do all that. This happened till 2017, and in 2017 we got the revised accreditation framework. In fact, the work on RAF actually began early in 2016, maybe a little bit earlier. And in the RAF was a major change because it brought in numbers, accountability, supporting documents, which had to be very accurate. And that was where the whole thing became a little bit more precise. And from 2017 to 19, there were a couple of changes in the manuals. What happened with the manuals, what types of manuals, more manuals came up. And then there were so many things in the metrics that people started, the HEI started thinking that why is there a duplication of information asked? What is asked as an extension activity is also asked in gender equity is also asked somewhere else. So this redundancy of metrics was also questioned, also thought on, and when it was thought on, this redundancy of metrics were addressed between 2019 and till present. And after that, so there was a big review system in that, and the redundancy of metrics was addressed. And in 2022, we are getting new manuals which will be applicable, some of them from October 22, some of them from June 22. So these are the new manuals which have come out at the latest point of time. Hereafter, what is going to happen, we are still not sure about, and that is what we are going to look into, what is going to possibly happen. Now, not only on the SSR part, but also on the AQR part, there have been a lot of a focus on timely and continuous submission of information. So in there, the revised guidelines which came in on 1st January 2014, those revised guidelines were in application up to the year, academic year 2019-20, and after that, the manual, the AQR system changed. Now this up to today, now presently, the AQR is technically a gist of the SSR with some view documents. So you have to upload some documents. They have been differentiated into universities, autonomous colleges, and affiliated constant colleges. So this is now a change. And the new one, which is exactly like the SSR, has been put into effect from the academic year 2021. So now whatever has been submitted in 2021 can become a platform for annual assessment, and a summation of these 5 annual assessments over 5 periods which you have submitted can become the SSR. So it is possible, if not impossible, right, for NAC to actually compile all this data and make it look like a completed SSR on which they can assess you. So this is why the AQR should also be taken as seriously as the SSR. Okay. Now, when we are looking at these definitions, I put definitions because I have a little bit of ambiguity in some of them. When we look at the definition for quality assurance, what are we looking at is 2 things. Number 1 is a systematic process, right, which will determine whether your product or service meets specified requirements. Now, who gives these requirements is an external agency, a person who buys, into quotes, your product. The product is also your student. Okay. So the person who really wants that student to come into his or her, what have you done to say that that particular student meets the required demands? That, and the process you have given for that is what we are calling as quality assurance. And the second part is quality assurance, which is again external. Look at the thing. The first definition is the HEI's responsibility, and the second one establishes and maintains set requirements. The establishment part could be extrinsic, whereas maintaining those set requirements is our problem in the HEI. Okay. Then coming to accreditation, accreditation is basically the action or process of officially recognizing someone or having a particular status or can perform an activity. So accreditation is a stamp. So instead of focusing on the term accreditation, we should focus on the second term, that is assessment. And assessment is to make a judgment about the nature or quality of someone or something, right? Now here, when you're making a judgment, right, on what do you base your judgment? Question number 1. Question number 2, what are the degrees of your judgment? Is it only a yes or no? Or do you want to put those yeses into excellent, very good, good, and no into absolutely bad, right? And that is where the judgment of assessment is often related to grading, and that grading is what we are looking at in those 7 stages that we have got from A++ to D. Right now, this is what we are talking about as assessment, and assessment becomes very difficult whether it is self-assessment or external assessment. And therefore, if I want to make the correct judgment, I must have the correct parameters, and these correct parameters are fundamentally a numerical or other measurable factor forming one of a set that defines a system or sets conditions of its operation, or it could be numbers that summarize data for an entire population. Now, please see what I'm talking about in terms of summarized data for an entire population. Here, our entire population is all the stakeholders of the HEI. And since it is population analysis, a lot of statistics comes in. For example, when I am trying to look at a course outcome, I am not going to take an individual student's result, though it is a subset of the data, right, to represent the whole HEI. I will be taking the result for that whole course of all the students who have attempted and examined for that course and summarize that data and call it a course outcome. So here, there could be an upper limit and a lower limit within which that data is accurate, and therefore that particular assessment or judgment, right? Many higher institutions, many HEIs say that, Array, I just missed my A plus by 0.1. Now that 0.1 at that moment of time may look very small, but to achieve that 0.1 in that whole SSR method of calculation involves at least more than 20 to 25 marks, if you want to call it marks. Okay, so this particular thing, we must remember that we must have a lot of accurate parameters to make an accurate judgment to get a good accreditation. Okay, this I have taken from the NAC website, all right, just yesterday. These are the RAF declared institutions from 1st July 2017, since the RAF started, to 26 September 2022, that is yesterday. 3011 colleges, 224 universities, in total 3235 HEIs have been, their grades have been declared. I also looked, when I had started preparing for this, I had also looked at the 16th September 2002, that is 10 days before this. And within these 10 days, these numbers have changed. There are 40 more colleges in 10 days and 4 more universities in 10 days. Now, it means that the rate at which accreditation is happening is pretty fast across the nation. That means in 10 days, 40 colleges and 4 universities, 44 HEIs have increased, have come into the category of accreditation. Okay. And if I'm looking at the distribution, which is here on the left, they have distributed the data into the gradations, the grades that have been obtained. We can see that only 23% have obtained A and above, right, in this institution. That is, in 3,235, only 23% have got an A or a higher than that. What does this mean? That there is scope for a lot of things still to happen. And during this change, if a new system is coming in, the people, the institutions which have gotten A++ may relax a little because, okay, the new system may not affect them too much because they've already done a lot, etc., etc. But there could be anomalies in their institutional outcomes. And in these outcomes, if they have to be revised, so they have to look at it equally responsibly and seriously as any other institution. So this is what I'm trying to tell. Number one, the rate at which accreditation is happening and what each institution needs to look at. Now, I was talking about addressing redundancy in the metrics. Now, what has happened? I'm looking at the RF only, affiliated constituent colleges, autonomous colleges, and universities. All right. 2017 to 19, what has changed from then 2021-22 and from July 2022? So if you look at this, the changes have happened here. Just look at this column, total metrics column. We have had 121 metrics. After that, that manual was split up into two. The UG colleges had 93 and PG had 96. The three which increased were related to research, citation index, H index, and all those. So those were the three. So there was a split. And now we have come back again to 55 metrics from July 22. And again, the split is not there. So we are looking at a redundancy of metrics from 121 to 55. For autonomous colleges, right, it has come down from 138 to 107. There is nothing yet which has been at least talked about or available on the website from July 22. So we are still with 107 metrics. Similarly, for universities, we are still with 115. But everywhere there has been some reduction in the number of metrics. So this is the redundancy address. In the SSR old system, the submission of the SSR, they had given windows. Okay, there were two sets of windows about 6 months apart. Now you can do it anytime. Why is it? Because whenever you're ready, you can just give it in. That means that the NAC has strengthened their whole system, right, a lot, so that the workload is spread all across the year. And another part which has happened in the new system now is the inclusion of the NEP aspects in 2A of part A. Okay, so that NEP aspects, those NEP aspects are also included. So besides addressing redundancy, NEP aspects have been included, and some people are really finding it difficult because it might not be applicable to them as yet. The next slide is fundamentally what are the major blocks towards accreditation. Number one, the motive. Many private self-funded institutions say that we are not worried about funding, we have got lots of fund. But now what has happened, that irrespective whether you are privately funded or you have a government funded institution, accreditation has been made, let us say, mandatory. The Gazette also has been published. All universities are that this is going to be mandatory. If it may go beyond funding. So quality has become the motivation. The other question is the supply demand part. The second part is supply demand. Whether only academics ensures job ready students. So we are only going into academics, give the specialization in a particular subject, and we say that the graduate is really going out into the world and will get it. So there people find that academics only does not ensure that you have a job ready student. Institutional diversity is another block. There are so many different types of diversities. I'm not talking about urban, rural, etc. I'm talking about the types of institutions, the types of engineering, management. If you look at the NIRF categorization, it will give you a good idea. And that diversity, it has to be brought in together, right, is a problem. Understanding and facilitating learning outcomes. We are now today saying that learning outcomes are the most important gauge, right, of whether the HEI has achieved its objectives. So if the learning outcomes are good and they are mapped and evaluated and they say that, yes, the learning outcomes have been achieved, right? This is, how do we actually say this? Does our assessment system today really assess that learning outcome? That is another part. And that is what we need to understand. Many people just write it because it has to be put into the manual without really understanding it. Then another caution is that there are some parameters which are included with respect to outcome evaluation. How do I evaluate? So understanding them, facilitating them, and then evaluating them. Evaluation was brought in by NBA. Most engineering and technology institutes have very good systems of evaluation. But if you ask them that what does this achievement of the high level mean, is it again population comes in? That how many of those students have achieved that high grade. Okay. And the last one is how do affiliated and constituent colleges answer queries related to NEP 2020 parameters? Because all of them, if you look at them, a majority of them are oriented on the curriculum. And if the curriculum is not set by an affiliated or constituent colleges, how can it say that I have taken, my institution has taken this particular step forward to facilitate the NEP activities? So this is another block. How do I answer that? What goes against accreditation for HEIs? The standards that NAC sets, that sometimes people say that if you have so many activities, good, you will get 4 out of 4. Okay. Though that standard becomes a ceiling and every institution tries to reach that number, that I will conduct 7 co-curricular activities this year. Now 7 becomes a ceiling, and that should become the floor, that at least I should go to 7, not up to 7. The workload associated with accreditation, we all know that. Now, is this going to be reduced? Is this going to be reduced in the coming years? It could be reduced, because why? If you're thinking of the workload per se, that is not going to be reduced. But the workload which is going to be reduced is to work in the last 1 year, actually 7-8 months, to do everything and to recall everything that was happening in the last 5 years, right? So that workload may be reduced. That if you are going to have the submission of the information continuously over the year, not even the AQR, over the year continuously, then that workload which comes, that stress which comes at the end of the system or end of that assessment period could get reduced. It is time consuming and challenging. Yes, it is true. It is time consuming and challenging. Time consuming is because you have to create the system, and challenging is because you want to create an efficient system. So once you have created an efficient system, it will not take long for you to. I know of some colleges which have taken more than 1.5 years, nearly 2 years, just to standardize and accept within themselves their own learning outcomes, right? So it is going to be time consuming and it is going to be challenging because of the diversity. The other thing is, numbers alone cannot be a measure of quality. Yes, I do agree with it. Does the number of full-time teachers, right, say that your process of teaching and learning is good? Or does the teacher-student ratio of even 1:15 say that your teaching is good or your teaching learning process is good? It does not merely say that. You have to have a little bit more, that because of this small ratio of 1:15, what have you been able to achieve? And that part is the proof that we need. Then the cost of accreditation, yes, it is high. Many colleges, I will not name them, but many colleges in rural areas say that we cannot afford it. Their student strength is low. Their courses are regulated by the fees, and therefore they cannot get additional funding. So from where will they bring all this money? It can be brought in. Yes, many colleges have taken specific exercises to take this money, taken it from the management, etc. But then you are responsible to the management for justifying this cost. What is the return on that investment? That I just want to go for accreditation, I put in everything, I put in the money, and then I get a B minus. But that is not what we are looking at. So the cost of accreditation against performance should be evaluated. And it is said that none of the present standards indicate improvement of quality in the classroom, right? That in the classroom is the standard upgraded. That means, is the student become more responsible, more of a graduate than just another student who is doing an undergraduate program. So these types of improvement in quality in the classroom, none of those are actually doing that. So this is what is going against accreditation, and this is what is being addressed in the coming time. Some views and comments which I've got across from many HEIs is accreditation, we take it more of as a compliance rather than self-assessment. So the focus is on doing what is asked and submitting the SSR and getting a grade. And then what? Then what? Another 4 years, we wait, do the AQR, and then the self-assessment. Now this self-assessment has to be, maybe made a little bit more responsible. Change in metrics over time is an inconvenience. So we start preparing with a set of metrics, we start preparing the documentation, and suddenly the metrics change, which is an inconvenience. Like I said, all HES cannot afford it. Adequate training should be given, that we should be trained as to how to make the documents, how to. Now, there are many workshops which have been conducted by NAC itself, right? And many FDPs which have been conducted, which actually tell us what to do. The other part is, the major part is the documentation, and for which the SOPs have been given very, very lucidly, very, very clear they are given. There are some areas which are slightly gray, but those can be overcome by the HEI if it looks into better. Many conventional colleges say that professional HEIs always get better grade. Perhaps it is true, because they have taken some kinds, their outcome can be measured, that how many engineers got a job, how many engineers got internship, how many engineers got projects, how many innovations happened in these professional colleges. So these kinds of factors which do not happen in other routine colleges of graduation, arts, science, and commerce, these things add up to their grades, and it is true to some grade, some level. Problematic when HEI transition of status involved. When a college goes from the affiliated status to the autonomous status, what is the problem? That what should I fill in? Because last 4 years I was affiliated, now I'm autonomous. I have been told to fill the autonomous, submit my documents as per the autonomous manual, but my information is mostly on that, on the affiliated side. So in this context, sometimes they face a problem, which is not a major problem at all. Like I said, metrics do not assess quality. I will be dealing with this due to use of proxy parameters. I will talk about that when we talk about research impact factors, etc. And documentation is difficult. Yes, documentation is primarily difficult. Today, there are lots of people who are offering software to get this, and this software is in the open market, right? In fact, I think RUSA Maharashtra also has some kind of software which they had brought in a year or so back. I'm not very sure about the status of that right now. But documentation can be brought in, documentation can be put into that. But the problem is, I will get a software to put a document, but do I have the document, and what should the documentation look like? So this is what they mean by documentation is difficult. It is not for the retrieval and depository, it is more of what the document should be. Coming to the third part, coming to the third part, that is the SSR. There is a change in approach to the SSR in the terms of metrics. We have seen that. So I am just taking one example here, that what should be our approach when we look at the SSR now. What should be the change of our approach, right? And look at it in that form, which will possibly give us a link from what we need to do now and preparing for what is coming ahead. So I'm taking the example of the affiliated constituent present NAC manual and how I think it should be interpreted. There are 55 metrics, out of which there are 21 which are qualitative and 34 which are quantitative. Okay, straightforward. However, I have divided this into the criteria, and I have divided these 55 metrics into two different categories. One is process centric metrics and number centric metrics, where numbers, absolute numbers have to be given and data templates have to be given where those numbers are reflected, right? And these are the metrics that come in, process centric metrics. Now, if you look at the ones which are highlighted in blue in the process centric metrics, these are actually numbers. They are going to be quantitative metrics. All right, they are quantitative metrics. But they are process oriented. So when they are going to be process oriented and we are just looking at the numbers, it is not going to work. Okay, it is not going to work. And in that context, what is going to work then is that we look at this as a process centric metric because we are going to write about it. Okay, I will just explain what I mean in a couple of slides. Number one, I told you, is inclusion of NEP 2020 parameters. Should the affiliated be responsible? That is the question which we will try to answer first. What they have asked is a description in maximum of 500 words on multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, academic bank of credits. These two may not be presently in the purview of an affiliated or a constituent college. However, multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary could be there partially because they could be having interdisciplinary programs. For example, if you have a department of biotechnology, that would be considered as an interdisciplinary course, if you have it. Okay. So in this context, this could be answered very little, but it could be answered. Academic bank of credits, we would not have. We may have a credit system. So you may partially try to answer that we have now changed our syllabus from that to a credit system, and we are a part of the CBCS of the university. So we have got the credits, right? And which are transferable or not, we are still not sure. Submitting to NAD we cannot transfer as an affiliated college. We either have to be autonomous or a university. That is a degree awarding institution, which can only register with the NAD. So this will be again a partial situation. Skill development can be introduced. Like if you have got BWOC courses, right, then those come under skill development. So that is one thing, that I have BWOC courses. You could have some courses which will come under developmental courses or certificate courses which the college has started. Those could be skill based. So that skill development could be answered to a better extent. Appropriate integration of Indian knowledge system, teaching in Indian language, culture using online course. Still, this is very difficult to understand for most affiliated and constituent colleges, because we do speak in vernacular. But what is meant here, appropriate integration, is fundamentally that we need to produce learning resources in that language, teach in that language, students should actually communicate in that language and answer question papers in that language. And the biggest hurdle is to create the learning resources in that. We still have to go into that to create those learning resources. Focus on outcome-based education. Yes, we have already started that because we are looking at connecting our syllabi to learning outcomes which are outcome-based. So this thing we are doing, and we are trying to measure outcome for every document we need to answer. If you are looking at the best practices, the format of the best practices, it says at the end, what was the outcome? What is the evidence of success? So success is the outcome, and what is your evidence for that is what you're trying to focus on. Distance and education and online, this may not be applicable to every affiliated, but at least online education, are we trying to build up the platform for online education? During the COVID situation, we were doing online education. So many colleges could already have an online education platform. That platform which you have used can be explained here. So this is what I mean. So it is not, you cannot negate all this and say, no, because it is the university's responsibility, we will not answer it. At least try to get information into it and leave what is beyond the scope of the institution itself. Coming to the process-centric ones, I have taken all the parameters which were listed there. Okay. Not all of them actually, but some exemplary ones, just to as an example. So the first column is the metric number, this is the metric description, and here is the question you need to answer, right? The question you need to answer and provide supporting documentation for. Do we do that is our question. When we are looking at this slide and a couple of more slides, do we do that? Do we provide, do we measure, or do we do this in the last column, and do we provide supporting evidence for that? So the institution ensures effective curriculum planning and delivery through a well-planned and documented process, including academic calendar and continuous conduct of. So we know that the process is continuous internal assessment. We know that the process is making the academic calendar. We know that we need to plan the curriculum and deliver it through a planned and documented process. So we know the process, we know what we need to do, right? So we write about how we plan it, how we deliver it, how we document it, what is our academic calendar, and how do we conduct the internal assessment. So we explain the process, okay? But how do you ensure that it is effective? Now, effective means getting it across, right? And after getting it across, what is your measure for efficacy? What is your measure for efficacy? And this is the difficult part for any institution to really answer, right? I will be taking this example and telling you exactly what I mean by it. Similarly, student-centric method, whatever I've underlined are the questions here. Student-centric methods such as experiential learning, participative learning, etc., are used for enhancing, not only giving, enhancing the learning experiences. What is your proof for having enhanced that the learning experiences, because you use ICT tools, have been enhanced? Program outcomes are offered and are stated. How are you evaluating educatedness, which is a primary part of general education in NEP 2020? What is educatedness? And our program outcomes and course outcomes need to be aligned to that. Then 3-1 institution has created an ecosystem. Is the ecosystem productive? I have created an ecosystem, but am I protecting the environment? It is asking that, okay, I have planted 3,000 trees. Why did I plant that 3,000 trees? To prevent erosion. Has erosion stopped? Similarly, if I create an ecosystem for innovation, right, and for creation and transfer of knowledge, is my creation productive? Has anybody used my creation or my innovation? The number of MOUs, linkages, student, etc. Have these MOUs been useful to the society in general? So I have MOUs, right? Have they been useful? So here, this slide is trying to tell you what I mean by effective, ensuring effectivity. So for that, I've used the definition of curriculum. Curriculum is a standards-based sequence of planned experiences where students practice and achieve proficiency in content and applied learning skills. So whatever is underlined is a process. Okay. Standards-based sequence. So what are the standards of the curriculum? First year, second year, third year, semester 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is my sequence, contemporary. In each of these semesters, there are n number of courses. So the syllabus is there, right? And this syllabus becomes my planned experience, whether it is a study tour, whether it is in the classroom. So across levels, I mean the first year, second year, third year, across the disciplines, and then the experiences in the classroom, experiences out of the classroom, co and extracurricular experiences. So what are my planned experiences? This is to be put into the curriculum. Students practice and achieve proficiency. How do you know that the students are doing what they're expected to do and that they have achieved proficiency in that? Proficiency you can interpret in any terms, right? A cricketer is proficient because he scores consecutive centuries. Okay. But what about a student? A student, you may grade that this student is a distinction student right throughout his or her career. So you may gauge it any way you want, depending upon your program, but that you want to test. So you need to give exercises so they practice and you test for it for their proficiencies. Content and applied learning skills. So what are all this is happening in the content? What is the content and the applied learning skill which is expected? This could be defined by the statutory bodies for innovative syllabi. So if you want the content to be there, same every year, okay, when you change the syllabus, nothing is innovative. And then if you ask what changes have been made, you say nothing. So this type of curriculum, effective, ensuring its effectivity. So what is your sequence? This is your documentation. What are your planned exercises? This is your documentation. What are the exercises you give and how do you test them? That is your documentation. What is the content required by the statutory body, whether it is an autonomous BOS or whether it is the university or whether it is an affiliated college taking the university syllabus. So what is your content? Is it giving all the experiences possible? And applied learning skills, what are you giving? And all this is given through the academic calendar, which is made so that there is no excessive burden on either of the stakeholders, the teachers and the students. So this is what we are looking at. And finally, what are the outcomes that you expect from this particular sequence? So according to whatever you have planned, what is the outcome you base? So do you want to say that all my students should get a distinction or all my students should be proficient in this particular exercise, right? And if this is what you're expecting, where are you giving it? And where is the time to give it? So all this is what you're trying to talk about, efficacy and ensuring that efficacy. The other process-centric metrics like availability of adequate infrastructure. What do you mean by adequate? Providing availability is one thing, providing is another thing. And are these standards for adequacy relevant? That if I say that my classroom is very big, right? And I can sit 120 students in the classroom. But if I go and see it, there are only 20 students in that classroom. So is it over adequate, or am I using it improperly? So what are my standards relevant? Percentage of this is a quantitative metric. I told you how it will change from a quantitative to a process. Percentage of expenditure incurred on maintenance of infrastructure, physical and now, when I'm looking at that, I concentrate on the expenditure and total and percentage. That is what is asked in the metric. But is it maintained? Does the infrastructure at least look maintained? If the peer team comes to you and they say that you have spent so much money, but it does not look maintained. So this is again a process-centric metric. Though your expenditure on that is there, the process is maintenance. There is a registered alumni association that contributes significantly. The contribution should be there and it should be significant. So for that, when I'm saying significantly, what is the tangible contribution and how have you ensured that? What is the tangible contribution? We don't say that. We just say something around the bush, beat around the bush and this it. 6 to 1. Again, effective and efficient. So are the policies which and the SOPs which you have put for everything, are they being followed? Right? How are you going to show that? I have a policy, I have a SOP, right? I pass it down to the stakeholders, but is it being followed? Right? And that is something which you need to take back through a different document, which could be a simple feedback. If you are taking a feedback from the stakeholder that these SOPs were given if to the HODs, right? Are the teachers following that SOP which the HOD had given to them? And that record you must take from the HOD of the departments. So this is what we are talking about as a process-oriented, process-centric metric. There is another quantitative one in 712. And the answer which has been asked is any one, any two, any three, all the above. So you put that, but there is a process in it. So what is the primary objective of each? That did you go through the process of alternative sources of energy? Do we need them? If we get them, what is our conservation going to be? Or because we have got a windmill, it rotates around and no energy is produced, or that energy is produced, but we don't know where it goes. So what is your expected outcome? Are you going to save? Are you going to save on electricity because of that windmill? And is it being achieved? Similarly, for all this, we say water conservation. We have a tank and we put water there. Do you use that water? And how much water have you conserved is the question. So that again, all these are process centric, right? And this process centric metrics, though they are quantitative, they are process oriented. And the last one, of course, everybody knows, portray the performance of an institution in one area distinctive of its property. So are you sure that this is consistent? Because we have said distinctive. If your distinction changes everywhere, every year, it is not distinctive. Why is one college known, right? Your priorities cannot also change frequently. So this has to be answered. What is the process you're thinking of when you're talking about distinctive, and how are you going to present it? Okay. So this is what I meant by process-centric metrics. Now coming to the future, assessment and accreditation system of assessment and accreditation, which is abbreviated in the white paper as SAA. So considering NEP 2020 and the proposed SAA, we are looking at these two documents. On one side, the NEP 2020, and subsequent to that, the guidelines for transdisciplinary interdisciplinary education, because these focus on what type of education you need to give. And the white paper actually talks about accreditation, how they are interlinked. Is that on the left, we are talking about reorganizing HEIs to become degree awarding institutions. So the types of institutions will become less. Because they have become less, right? The benchmarks for each type of institutions will become different, right? And because of this, unification might come in. Okay, I will explain that a little bit later. And the second part is because, so there will be things like on the other parallel side, we might come up to binary accreditation. We might come up to grading of units and programs. In fact, grading of programs is also being done. Actually, accreditation of program is being done by NBA, right? This is coming into NAC now. That if it is a constituent college, then the university goes for accreditation, and each unit, or a constituent university rather, a university with constituent college, then each constituent college will be called a unit, and that unit will be graded separately, right? And that summation or whatever evaluation will come up, the university will be graded on. So it could be now unification and subsets of that unification. And the other part will be instead of summative evaluation, we might come up with formative assessment. So I had talked about that you will have to give your information continuously, like we do for continuous evaluation of our students. On the curriculum side, we are talking about OBE, outcome-based education. We are talking about HOCC, higher order cognitive capacities, and we are talking about academic bank of credits, right? And that is what we are trying to define teaching, learning, and curriculum. That how should our teaching, learning be outcome-based? What are the parameters that we are saying that now the student has been taught well or learned well? The HOCC will come in. And what will be our units? Our units will be the credits. So these trying to define teaching, learning, and curriculum come together. So these are the main, let us say in this Venn diagram, we are looking at this overlap, and we will be talking mostly about the right-hand side because I do not want to overlap into how this is, but we will be making a reference to that. So what are our current problems which have been stated in the SEC, SAA? Number one is intrinsic. So we have two types of problems. I have tried to divide them into this, intrinsic and extrinsic. This is from the HEI point of view. The extrinsic ones are the large affiliating universities. So unification becomes a problem. We have a very fragmented ecosystem that we talk about isolation, that one university does not talk to another university of how their syllabi should be, what is being taught, how it is being taught. So we do refer to the syllabi, but we have a fragmented ecosystem. We have rigid separation of discipline, BSc microbiology, BSc chemistry, right? Engineering, we have so many subsets of engineering. Limited access to students. Now, this is what we are talking about on the national level about GR. Medium of instruction, a big thing to talk about, but not on this platform. So what medium of instruction should it be there? Should it be English? Should it be vernacular? Should it be at the state level? Should it be bilingual? All right? Or should it be simultaneously into two languages or two media of instruction? There is suboptimal governance and leadership. We don't really know whom to follow at what time, right? And therefore, who is responsible for a decision sometimes becomes a problem, right? Because we receive a lot of directives from the Director of Higher Education, from the state government, from the UGC, from NAC. Which one, and at different times, and they may not be coherent. So we are looking at governance and leadership being a little bit confusing from the HEI point of view, and an ineffective regulatory system. That what should happen at what time. If I want to appoint teachers, why have they not been appointed? So why is this regulatory system not being put into place? So these are extrinsic, which are affecting the activities of the institution. What the institution may not be doing or may not be allowed to do. Development of cognitive skills and learning outcomes, because we don't have time, because of this discipline and the syllabi that we have been making, detailing, we increase the syllabus to such a level that we don't have time for any other things. Limited teacher autonomy. Teacher is given a syllabus, has to teach. If anybody teaches away from that, then it can be criticized. That why are you not teaching what is to be taught? Why are you teaching something outside? Even if it is useful, you will not complete your syllabus in time. And that time frame is because of our extrinsic factors. Inadequate mechanisms for merit-based career management and progression of faculty within the institution. Okay, this is disputable, right, because of the caste system, but the internal mechanism for career management, which is seen in many private universities, needs to be brought in and can be brought in, and that could be brought in the SAA through what is called as the tenure track. If you look at the NEP, it mentions something called as the tenure track. I would suggest that all of you please look into it. And lesser emphasis on research and publication in affiliated colleges, of course, because that is not the priority, and this is being addressed by the NEP totally in how it is going to make its institutions. So, looking at the institutions today, the present status, we are looking at the university, affiliating university, and all the HES which are affiliated to it. They are affiliated for curriculum, faculty selection, examinations, and partial funding. And we have autonomous colleges, which are separate entities, right? What is proposed, the time for change has come, and what is projected is universities would be classified into two: research institute intensive and teaching intensive. So RUs and TUs. Okay, this is the designation given here: research university, teaching university. That university could have its own constituent colleges. So this whole, whether it's a research intensive or a constituent colleges, this whole unit could be assessed as one. I told you earlier, right? So the university will be accredited and constituent colleges could be graded. We also have affiliated colleges proposed, and those could be responsible towards the university as they are today. What could also happen is that many affiliated colleges with similar orientation could form a cluster within themselves, which would be called as a HEI cluster. Now, this is the focus of the HEI clusters is academic bank of credits, transfer of credits. If they are of similar nature, and there are some credits that students want to take, let us say in the field of commerce, which are not being offered here, and in the next college is being offered, then that within that cluster, we could get a transfer of credits. So this HEI cluster is also envisaged, which would have its own managerial or management system, finance and management system overall across the whole cluster. The cluster colleges, after they have seen all this, could ultimately go towards becoming an autonomous college, right? And at that time, the autonomous college, which is going to be a graded autonomy, essentially would become a degree awarding institution. So what the NEP suggests is that every institution, irrespective of whether it's a university or an autonomous college, should be a degree awarding institution, right? And the affiliation system should be reduced as much as possible. So this is the projected status. Now, this is the proposed timeline, which is given in the white paper of how things would be happening. I will not describe them. You can take this as a descriptive one, but I will be looking at only the assessment part. There are two parts. Now, the top part is how the NEP syllabi and transdisciplinary aspect and the HOCC and all this will be addressed, and the system for assessment and accreditation, how it will be doing that. So there are three phases: phase 1, 2, and 3. The first one is expected to be 2 years. The second one is 3 years, from years 3 to 5, and the last one is 6 to 10 years. So technically, right now, it is said that this could take about 10 years to bring into practice finally, and it would be completely 100% implemented. So fundamentally, the system would be rethought about, a lot of brainstorming. And one of the most important things is that harmonization between NBA, NRF, AISHE, and NAC. So instead of submitting the same data everywhere, every time, at different times, this harmonization, if it is brought into place, it would reduce the workload, and it would also help in all the three objectives of the three institutions, NBA, NIRF, AISHE, sorry, 4 institutions, and NAC. The second part is, once this brainstorming is done, then the SAA, right? The criteria would be optimized and bring in another aspect which we call as the TEFA, that is Technology Enhanced Formative Assessment. I was talking about, there is the what would we call institution called as ONOD, that is One Nation, One Data. This system is actually trying to be put in place at the central government level. And all the data would be collected on the platform through TFA. Now, TFA will differ from that ONOD in the sense that ONOD would be a data repository, whereas TFE would be an assessment part. So data retrieval from that, right, and trying to assess it would be the part of TFA. And finalizing and testing manuals, where we are looking at 4 institutional types, right, and the manual would be in 2 parts, and I will come to that a little bit later, and pilot testing of this whole system of TFA, the manuals, right, and how the response to the manuals is. And later on, the SSA expansion, whatever feedback we get from that, streamlining of that, and then optimize the SSA, SAA, and TFA in the revised form. So this would end the process of the manuals, data acquisition, data repository, right, and the system of assessment. So in this, it is expected that this should be the desired outcomes. These don't look different from what we have today. So creativity and innovation, how are we going to assess it for either a job or any kind of work? Critical and high order thinking. High order thinking is what they have put in terms of HOCC, which is required in both areas, research and doc. More in-depth learning, which we have translated today as real life situation. How will they get into that system? Problem solving, that is coping with disruptive technology or disruptive situations. Anything which is a problem now, how to solve that, disruptions. Then teamwork, interdisciplinary approach. Now this is where our syllabi will come into place. Communication skills will go into lifelong learning, and not communication skills only, but what to communicate. Okay. And increase in social and moral awareness, which we are talking about in terms of ethics and social involvement. So the desired graduate outcomes, if you are looking at it, are not very different. They have been rephrased to include whatever is we are talking about in a more open way. Regarding the curriculum, I will not talk about this too much. This is just a slide you can take home. But what we are talking about is to improve the standard of undergraduate education. So all these 6 factors will come in. I'm just going to talk about HOCC in the next slide. So what is HOCC? Higher order cognitive capacities. How do you ensure that assessment is what we have a question in front of us? That is the major question that has not yet been answered, right? But can we try to answer that so that we can actually start preparing for it? Now I have divided all these into 2 sets, one on the right, one on the left. The one on the right, that is this 6 of them, these can be assessed through testing systems which are already with us, okay, or which we can create very, very easily based on what we have. Whereas the ones on the left need thought. And those testing systems are what we are going to talk about, okay, in the next chapter. So that is the next chapter. aligning the NEP and expected SAA methodology. How am I going to align them? The major areas of consideration in the SSA, which have been defined in the white paper, are defining the functions of SSA, recommendations which have been given, creating an ecosystem, creation of multiple accreditation bodies and unified manuals, binary accreditation, and how NAC or NAC, National Accrediting Council, which is what is envisaged as an overlooking body for the whole accreditation system in India for all types of institutions. So it may not be called NAC, or it may be NAC whose subsidiary could be NAC, or we are not sure about that. But I think it might come under the umbrella of NAC, NAC. What the HAIs will have to reform. So these are the 7 aspects that we will be looking at now. The 3 functions of SAA. Which have been defined: quality enhancement, nudge, guide, and help HAIs to improve upon their current quality of education and research, of course. Quality maintenance, help HAIs to not go down from their current quality. And assessment and accreditation, use the mechanisms of A&A to serve functions A and B. So through assessment, what nudging is required and what they should do is going to be there, and if they underperform, it will be evident in A&A. So coming down to the whole crux is that we need to look at C first and then think about A and B. So what are the recommendations? So I was talking about recommendations of the SSA. The recommendation is that in case of research universities, assessment of student learning outcome, first of all, should be done, and quality and impact of research should be done in case of research universities and autonomous institutions. So how are we going to assess student learning outcome? First thing, question. Second is principles of transparency, self-disclosure, hand-holding, mentoring, incubation, and ongoing quality improvement must be a basis for robust. So before we think of SAA and parameterizing everything, there must be good hand-holding, good transparency, good self-disclosure, good mentoring, all right? So we will require a lot of training is what we are trying to see. The manual has been described, okay, for 2 areas, for general education and for specialized education, which is the NEP mandate. HEIs will be accredited in binary mode. Units and programs could be assessed and graded separately. TFA I told you about, and multiple accreditation agencies. So these recommendations I have been given there. If you look at it, these have been already talked about, but I'm giving them here as basic descriptive information. Now, looking at creating an ecosystem for assessment. Creation will be at 2 levels, organizational and reaching out to HEIs. So organization will be multiple bodies of and assessors for A&A trained by NAC or NAC. Involvement of state higher education councils and creating education quality professionals. Now, this is something which we are talking about out of the ecosystem of colleges. We are going to create education quality professionals. Like we have NBA experts, we could be having educational quality professionals who will be trained and designated as education quality professionals. So many teachers, it has been suggested that many teachers could look at this as a professional improvement during their tenure or even after their tenure. Then after the organizational setup, we say reaching out to the HEIs. The assessment system will have to have workshops for curriculum design and development, brainstorming for SAA, and training for TFA. So this is where the SAA externally should create this ecosystem. creation of multiple accreditation body. In the NEP 2020, it is said that there will be a accrediting body under NAC. What they mean is that it will train and approve organizations to become approved accreditation bodies in India. Like we have TUV for NBA or ISO, sorry, for ISO. Like that, we could have training from this and approved accreditation bodies who will have trained assessors under them. NAC could also have its own trained assessors as we have now. And therefore, it will be ensured that parallel work will go on, right, for accreditation of HEIs. And therefore, more HEIs would be accredited within the given span of time. Then unified manuals. Today, if you are looking at NAC, there are 16 manuals. I've only put 9 here. Okay. There are 16 manuals, of which the ones which are highlighted in blue, right? These will be effective in 2022. This is from 1st June. These are from October 22. So these are coming up still. And what is intended that from these 16, we should come down to only 4. So the affiliated ones remain, autonomous come in, and the 2 types of universities. And the manual will have 2 types, two parts, generic outcomes and specialty outcomes. So this is what it is expected. All right. And this is given in the section 7.1 of the white paper. The current NAC classification of institutions is based on the parameters of administration and the types of degrees they provide, not their function. Now, it is arguable that what is the function? Is the function to provide degrees or education? Now, if we associate degrees and education, then this is where the anomaly lies. If our function, irrespective of the institution, is to give basic education, and education is defined differently, then degree does not become education. Okay. So this is what we are, this is why this whole concept of unified manuals is brought in. Now, this is contrary to the belief. The argument is that if you're looking at this cartoon, for a fair, it is said for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Now, this means that will the unified manual be an injustice on someone because of the inability of one size fits all? All right. And to where our Honorable Prime Minister has quoted this, that whatever education or university, we should look at it at the global level of benchmarking. And the global level of benchmarking says something different from what we are trying to say today. So what is our argument here? So if you are looking at unified, does this argument hold true? Coming to binary accreditation. Binary accreditation technically means that an institution, irrespective of whether it's university, college, autonomous, etc., is either accredited or not accredited. No grades, no A++, no A, B++, anything. Right? And each program in that or unit in that, right? There may be 3 programs or 3 units. Then assessment-based grading could grade them differently. 1 and 2 could be graded A, whereas the 3rd program or unit could be graded C. Right? Now, this could affect the accreditation of the HEI, but it will not be discretionary because this will actually remove the average base. If one is very highly performing and one is very poorly performing, average means that both are performing average, which is not the real picture. And the second part is of unifying all this. If you look at NBA does annual and it does for a program. NRF does annual, it does it for an institution, ranking. And NAC, by the virtue of the AQR, it is doing annual assessment. It is doing periodic assessment of the institution at 5 years, enough time for something to happen. It is doing it at the institutional level, and now it is also proposing to do it at the program level. And therefore, what we are looking at is the whole NAC structure, right? Would be easy to integrate the other two, right? If it can be done, right? And then that becomes a policy decision, and that will all come under NAC, of which NAC could be one of the constituent bodies. So we are looking at how NAC is progressing towards integrating everything in a wise manner, right? And how does it envisage the accreditation process? It basically says change from input to outcome-based assessment, not entirely relying on the SSR, reduce the weightage of the peer team visit. Recently, there was a big issue about the Maharaja Sayajirao University in Baroda regarding the peer team visit. A lot of things happened. It had come in the newspapers. So that peer team visit, reducing its human factor, right, is what is intended. Mapping of learning outcomes and question papers to become HOCC oriented. In fact, they are saying that 10% of the questions should be on the basis of HOCC in every question paper now. I'm proposed. Okay, how it is going to happen, we are not worried about now. Research assessment to be oriented towards originality, creativity, and impact of research work rather than proxy parameters. So this is figure 3, which is given there. Figure 3, input versus output. This is what we are doing right now. IIQA, our SSR and the visit, all this is input based, whatever inputs we are giving. Outcome based would be real-time data, black and white, stakeholder satisfaction survey beyond the students and the alumni. Function based outcomes rather than number based. So what I was talking about as process oriented metrics, and learning outcomes would be redefined on the HOCC basis. Not rely on the entirely on the SSR. This is given in section 5.10 and 5.11. 5.10 says that ask institutions to provide evidence. That evidence is samples of learning materials and continuous assessment tasks. And finally, that you have given to show that they have met the goals. And institutions should accept the responsibility of examining the evidence to make an assessment. So when you have got that document, you should first make an assessment, and that is the evidence you provide. So it is not just giving the paperwork. What assessment have you done on that? So I was talking about proof that the learning experience have enhanced due to ICT. Have you assessed that? You have done it. You say that you have met the outcomes, right? But have you assessed those? That is what we are asking. And student feedback as a source of evidence. You need to check whether the feedback is representative of a population of students. Right now, NAC is saying that give it to us, the minimum is 10%, 100, whichever is lower. If I have a 4,000 student, right, then my minimum 10% would be 400. And my minimum otherwise would be 100. So if we are taking a representative sample, statistically, would it be 100 in 4,000 students? And that is what we need to look at. And what it provides is a measure of quality of teaching rather than the popularity of teaching of the teacher. So when I'm answering that SSS, am I looking at the teacher first or the quality of teacher? So you have to train the students to get real feedback. And then the question of reliability of data needs to be carefully addressed. How is the assessing agency going to say that this data is reliable? Okay, so this is why they say we will not entirely rely on the SSR. Reduce the weightage of peer team visit. The statement is it is recommended that the role of the peer team visits be facilitatory in nature and does not have significant weightage. So first of all, it was 100 previously. RAF made it about 30%. Now how much? And what do we mean by facilitatory? Okay. So this is another how it is envisaged. Then coming to mapping learning outcomes, I talked about two parts. One which can be through exams and question papers, right? We have to set very, very good rubrics for it. We have already started the rubrics for self-directed. All these are accessible through testing. That if I give a home assignment, independent learning, critical reading, I tell them that what is criticized in this paper and what you think and why it has been criticized. So critical reading and critical thinking can be done. Rational inquiry can be done, right, on the same lines. Innovative problems, if I can bring up a problem for them and try to take an exercise and come out with whose solution, possible solution is innovative, that can become an exercise. And clear, precise and effective communication can be taken as either oral presentations or written presentations, or even the project reports which the students submit at the PG level for their research projects can be a measure of that. We could, instead of having MCQs, we could have medium essay questions, MEQs, medium essay questions. These are not as big. These are not as big as the ones which normally put discuss that, discuss. I don't understand discuss when you are asking a question, because discussion takes place between two people. And here you are telling them to describe. Okay, so description comes in and you say this is a description. So these types of MEQs can be gauged. These are used quite a lot, right? And these types of inquiries can come in for mapping the learning outcomes for HOCC oriented outcomes. Talking about the ones which are not tested directly, these are the ones: ethics, pragmatic ability, citizenry, aesthetics, societal and. Now, if you look at ethics, there are key questions, 8 key questions that come under ethics: fairness, outcomes, responsibility, characters, liberty, empathy, authority, and rights. So, if I ask a student, how can you act equitably and balance legitimate interests? Where can we see this? This will need a lot of exercise, lot of brainstorming to come up with these outcomes. All right. What achieves best short-term and long-term outcomes for all others and me? For me, I know, but how will the HEI know? How will the HEI know that what are the long-term, what achieves the best outcomes for me? What are my responsibilities and duties, or what obligations apply to me? Coming to class and being present for 70% is the floor, not the ceiling. This is what we must try to imbibe in them, right? Now, these are to be explored, will be explored, but we can start thinking on them. I'm not taking all this because it will take a lot of time. Coming to research assessment, it has been said that research will be assessed on originality, creativity, and impact of the research work. What do they mean by that? Okay, what are we doing it now on? So this is a statement which has been given 11.4.1. Assessment of research quality is currently done by metrics such as the impact factor of the journal, H index, etc. These are proxy indicators of quality. So if we take the example of citation index, have we ever asked why did the user cite it? Or is it because it was my friend and I told him that please cite mine also, huh? We are working on similar, so that my citation index increases. By virtue of that, unknowingly, the impact factor of the journal increases. And because the impact factor of the journal in which I have published increases, my impact factor, which I'm going to report, is going to increase. But for your information, the impact factor is directly not affected, right, by having too many papers published on your side, right? It is the what we say legitimacy and the quality of the papers published in that journal that are assessed by a review committee, which actually talks about the impact factor. I was looking at it today itself that the genesis of impact factor began because there were very few journals at that time. Now the quantity of journals has become so much that we are looking at even project reports and theses going into publications. In fact, we demand that by universities that there should be 2 published articles on your research work before you submit your research thesis. So these things are increasing and at times reducing the value of impact factor, and therefore they are called as proxy parameters. Right? What HEIs will have to reform? Evaluating, I told you, this is the major part, the second one. Teaching should go from the know that form to the know how to form. That means my student knows that, but my student does not know how to do it. He knows it, but he doesn't know how to do it. Right? I know where the bolt of a car is, but I don't know how to remove that. Right? So that is the difference. And that is what we should try to go to that. And that is then associated with skilling, which we are talking about as the second part of what we intend to do in NEP 2020 in terms of the curriculum. So from know that to know how to. And that is also related to the learning outcomes. Because if you see how learning outcomes are defined, we say that at the end of the program, the student should be able to do something. So know how to do it. Right? Other things I've talked about. Right. The other part is that if you are a constituent college, or if you are a single department, or if you are a single program, it is also your responsibility to see that your program and your unit also improves in the SAA simultaneously with the HEI. So because everybody else is doing research, I don't have to do research. Because my students do not actually fall under a category of students who are interested in extracurricular activity of a sort, then okay, doesn't matter. Other students are going, so your individual program may also be evaluated and graded. So that is another part where you will have to reform. Right? Then we talk about TFA, technology enhanced formative assessment. Summative assessment we have been doing current fixed time point data entry, IIQA, SSR, DVV, AQAR, and the PR team visit. This is what we have been doing. What is now going to happen in formative assessment is that we intend to capture real-time data and continuous assessment of the outcomes. More comprehensive, reliable, and realistic assessment, because we are going to change parameters, right? Towards a particular goal of education being general education and having HOCC. Support assessors. This system, formative assessment, will support the assessors to capture real-time activity, performance, and outcomes supported by documents which are going to be explanatory rather than just number to number validation. Right? Supported by documents, could be through web links. We will have videos and other evidence of quality. So it could be even participation in a national level conference could become supporting evidence, and any link given to your participation could be evidence. And this should be real time. So you don't have to upload it at the end. And therefore, though the platform, we don't know about the platform, but if the platform is strong enough, then it can support everything that you can give in the ICT format. Provide new avenues for self-assessment. Because you are continuously giving the information, your self-assessment, if you're going to do it from that data, right, can be more factual. You can take the action on a particular aspect faster and in time, right? And you can actually talk about comprehensive 360-degree evaluation. You are talking about each, today we call it AAA, academic and administrative audit, which is expected to be 360-degree evaluation. Now, this AAA will become a thing of the past. It will become an internal affair totally, because you are being assessed continuously outside. And if you want to do it for self-assessment, then the new avenue for AA will be created. And it will also become comprehensive because it will give you real-time data. So that is how this TFA is expected to work. Now, I was talking about A, B, and C right in the beginning, the three major things, of which I will be talking about A little bit. That is nudge, guide, and help HEIs to improve upon their current quality of education and research. So what is expected from outside that we would get from NAC or NAC is mentoring HEIs to meet the criterion standards set. So some criteria will be set, some standards will be set. This will be brainstormed ahead of time and they will come to you. Spell out the outcomes of learning expected of the graduates of an HEI. So help again in how to spell out the outcomes. Provide a rubric if these learning outcomes are paid attention to, right? So not only the outcomes, but the rubric. And this rubric will be provided for two things: preparation of the curricula, the learning materials, and the classroom activity, and the testing of that through continuous assessment and finally. So technically, a complete basic skeleton of what the outcome should be and how the rubric will assess them, both in the examination part and the curriculum to learning outcome relationship part. This is the last part that I'm talking about. I think there are 4 more slides. I will be finishing a little bit earlier, so we leave time for questions. What are the challenges to the new system? Now, these challenges are a part of that document, white paper. There is a graphical representation at the end, a survey of around 400 persons was taken. It is not too high, but high enough to at least start something. And out of that, whatever responses have been given, since we are talking about SAA only, I've brought together 4 major challenges which the HEIs need to address, or what they have been given as challenges by the respondents. Now, the question, the number in the bracket is the question number. So they may not be in sequence. We will start with number 8. So the challenge is inculcating the higher order cognitive capacity. How to inculcate them? And when inculcating them, the questions that may have been asked were these. Training of faculty members will be a challenge because faculty members will have to have a change of mindset, understand what HOCCs are, how to address them in the curriculum, how to test them, and how to present them. So the maximum respondents say that this is the major challenge, and which is true. Second is availability of learning resources. That when I want to, I prepare my textbooks today based on information which will be taken directly and more often than not presented directly in the examination answer sheet. So my learning resource is designed from Z to A approach. What are the questions in the question paper? What are the answers expected? Therefore, what should the text be? And if this text is not adequate enough to address the higher cognitive HOCC, then my availability of learning resources becomes a problem. Revamping of examination, not many people thought it would be difficult. That means that people must have thought of what these questions could be, that they will be able to set them, right? And therefore, it was given in that. The concept is adequately understood of what HOCCs is, so that is not a problem. And people may not have been sure about student reluctance because the student today has no major say in the syllabus, except maybe a few colleges which may have taken that step. So this student reluctance was possibly overseen to a large degree because we don't really know that are they reluctant in inculcating HOCCs. Do they know the difference? How many of them have read these documents? The second is shifting to binary accreditation. This is a soft issue. I mean, a very, very sensitive issue, not soft, sensitive. Will funding allotment decision takes place on binary? Now, today what we say that if you want to apply for some funding, maybe minimum accreditation should be A grade, right? Minimum should be A grade. In some cases, your CPE status or College of Excellence status may be graded on a higher than A plus or A plus plus, right? If funding allotment decisions, more or less and the least, how will I differentiate if there are many A's or there is no grade at all? So I'm saying I'm accredited. I may be accredited according to the primary, according to the present system as B plus. Another college, according to this system today, may be A plus. But in the new one, we will say both are accredited. So will there be any difference in the funding allotment decisions? Will there be reduced competitiveness? So does A want to go to A plus plus, or is it satisfied that it is A accredited? Okay. So if you look at this, these are the two major concerns. There would be others. I have not seen the questionnaire per se or the responses which are given, but this is what we are looking at. Creating an ecosystem for assessment and accreditation, both sides are involved. So transparency becomes one of the major factors, right? That it should be adequately transparent. So 55, nearly 60%, 56% respondents have said that the transparency should be there. That means they feel that transparency is not there. So do they want increased transparency, or which are the areas which are not transparent? This should be defined and this could be addressed then. Training assessors. Now, training assessors in the present system, the assessors are only talking about qualitative metrics. So is this something which is corresponding? Is this corresponding either number one to the training that assessors have got, and that they should be, and if the feedback that is being received by NAC from assessors who have gone for assessment. If you look at the NAC website today also, some assessors have been disqualified. Why have they been disqualified? We don't know. So obviously some part of training has not been imbibed, and therefore training of assessors becomes important, and that also becomes important from the giving point of view, where we are talking about multiple accreditation agencies. So they should be trained sufficiently and at par, right? So they should not have that human factor in them, and therefore their weightage should be reduced. So all these are intertwined things, and therefore this is, and dilution of assessment rigor, because we will have only 4 types of manuals, right? Part A and Part B in each. Will there be a dilution of the metrics, and will the assessment thereby become diluted? So the rigor of assessment which we feel today, we feel very proud that we have got a A plus, and we feel very sad that we have missed the A plus by 0.1. So this kind of involvement and rigor in assessment, will it, 33% nearly have said that yes, there will be a dilution. And last one is adoption of technology. This is for formality, that is TFA. Will it reduce the burden of data collection? Right, that is the aim. Digital infrastructure upgradation, major challenge. Why? Because upgradation costs, the platform costs, do we have that platform available across institutions? So infrastructure upgradation, digital literacy of the staff who are going to put in things. This could come through training, but this is another challenge, that those staff, will they be dedicated ones? Will they be a part of the IQAC, or will they be, like we say, na, computer science department will look after it, or IT department will look after it? This is something which has to be addressed, and technical manpower to sustain the platform. This will also be required. So these are the three challenges to adoption of technology. So this was the part of challenge. My last slide is in the summary. After all this, what are we looking at? The HEI has to think about course designing for transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary aptitude. Okay, on the basis of which the learning outcomes of generalized and specialized education will be based, which will be actually the bedrock of revamping the approach towards the SSA, and the SSA will take help of the TFA for continuous data acquisition and submission, and we will have to take more than the current stakeholders in expressing the satisfaction. So in short, we have to reboot the system, right? Though the hardware and the software has not changed, maybe there's a bug, it may be a big bug, but we will have to reboot the system. Thank you very much for a very, very patient listening. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I will be happy to address them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful session. Participants, you all can post your questions in the chat box. Or you all can unmute yourself and ask the questions to sir.
Madam, can I stop sharing? So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can.
Yeah.
Yes, Mita ma'am, over to you.
Yes. Hello, Bole sir. I had a query.
Yes, ma'am.
In case of mapping questions in terms of MCQs, to the various program outcomes.
Yes.
Some levels may not have been obtained, maybe with regard to evaluation, the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay.
So yes, so in such a case, how we can prove the validity of the program outcomes?
They have not been attained, so they have not been attained. Is that what you are asking?
Yes, sir. Yes, because like for example, MCQs, there are some constraints with regard to attaining higher levels of
correct. So
taxonomy.
can we take any other system other than the question paper to address that learning outcome?
Maybe a project or a case study. Yes.
You may have a case study, you may have a home assignment, you may have other forms.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. Oh, sorry, good afternoon, Alfonso, brother Alfonso. Yes.
Okay.
So it is not necessary, it should be only question paper oriented.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Bole sir.
Yeah.
Yes. Dear participants, any other queries that can be posed to Dr. Bole?
I know it's going to be a lot of to digest, and everything seems to be a little bit hazy right now as to what is going to happen, what is not going to happen, etc.
Yes. So we're getting appreciation for your talk. Mr. K. Upendra stated on chat, it's a very comprehensive talk, many key insights.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. I thank Dr. Balachandra Bole for his in-depth presentation on quality assurance, accreditation and assessment NAC perspective. His slides were very visually appealing and threw light on various topics of the impact of national education policy on the accreditation process. He spoke on topics related to vision of NAC and NEP 2020, binary accreditation, creation of an ecosystem, and institutional preparedness towards system of accreditation and assessment. Thank you, sir. Your session was indeed enriching, and it was a delight to listen to you.
We request all the participants to kindly turn on their cameras so that we can have a group photo with Bole sir.
And you will send that to me, I hope.
Yes, sir, sure. Definitely, sir, we will be sharing with you. We request all the participants kindly turn on their cameras. Yes, sir, I have taken. Thank you, sir. Participants, we have shared the certificate details link with everyone. We request everyone to kindly check their details. And yesterday's session recording with the resource person material we have mailed to each participants. Same we will be doing on each day. We will be mailing you all the session recording as well as the resource material shared by the resource person to us. Thank you everyone for your wonderful patience and listening to our resource person and your interaction with them through question and answer session. With this, we come to the end of day 2. We will be resuming tomorrow at 10 a.m. for day 3 session of Symposium, wherein we have another 2 resource persons who will be talking on other aspects of our national education policy.
Thank you,
And-
Bole sir. Thank you, Natika.
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
sir.
Natika, madam.
Thank you, Bole, sir, for
Thank you.
accepting our
Thank you.
invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
I hope I have your permission to leave now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
And just a kind request to participants that we will not be sharing any feedback link via WhatsApp group or personally to any of the participants or via mail. Feedback link will be only posted in the chat box, and we are repeatedly posting it till the session is active for last half an hour. The link would be posted. So we request the participants, if you all have missed any of the giving feedback for any of the resource person, so it's okay from our end, but kindly don't request us to mail or share the feedback link via WhatsApp message. So thank you everyone. With this, we are ending the meeting. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you all.